Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love, here with Sports Overview Topics, episode number 45. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Um, and keep going, keep going. But nonetheless, a good week of sports as we gear closer to the NFL draft, which is this Thursday, uh, starting Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It should be fun. It should be very interesting considering how this draft is escalating. And what I mean by that is because with all the uncertainty, as in we had met a lot of top prospects opt out last season, including Panay Sewell, Rashawn Slater, etc., Jamar Chase, and with the no combine this year, only pro day workouts and things like that nature. So it's going to be very interesting to see how well it go. I mean, the reality is the draft starts at pick 3 with the 49ers. The reason why, because of that is because we know Trevor Lawrence is going number 1. We know that. Unless somehow, excuse me, the Jaguars get a trade that they can't say no to. Like Patrick Mahomes for the first overall pick or Justin Herbert, etc. But yeah, nonetheless, and we know pretty much that Zach Wilson is going number 2 to the Jets. And the question then begins to surface, who are the Niners taking at 3? Because, I mean, they traded all that capital to move from 12 to 3 with the Dolphins. And to be honest, when you look at that compensation, you could say if the allegations weren't surfacing with Deshaun Watson, he would probably be a 49er right now, and either the Dolphins or someone else would be taking that pick at number 3. But nonetheless, at number 3, very interesting to see whether it's Mac Jones, whether it's Justin Fields, or Trey Lance at number 3. Um, but nonetheless, it should be interesting, especially in the top 10, really, because, I mean, you got Atlanta at 4. What are they going to do? You got the Bengals at 5. Protection for Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts if he's there. Just a lot of interesting factors that are going to go and make this draft really interesting. Also, I think many people are just curious to see how it's going to look because, I mean, it's going to be in Cleveland. Roger Goodell has been vaccinated, so apparently we can still get those interactions between the prospects and the commissioner. So that's always a nice aspect to the draft. But we'll see how it goes down. I'm just glad that it's going to be a much more normal like draft this year as opposed to last year. Even though last year was fun, It wasn't the same. But we'll see how it goes down Thursday. We also got UFC 261 on Saturday. Talk about a fun card. A fun card. And one of the elements, right off the bat, you can tell watching the prelims that something was different. And you could tell it felt much more better. And the reason for that is the 15,000 fans that were in attendance. That added because the reality is, it's like, well, many of the fights in the Apex for UFC have been good fights, many of the good fights, but you could tell that one thing was missing. That was the fan interaction and the reactions, because they can boo, they can cheer. When someone gets hurt, someone gets rocked, there's always that big expression in the crowd. Not just from Joe Rogan, but you hear that sound from the crowd and it just makes it more impactful. And that's what you saw when you watched UFC 261 on Saturday. And it was a crazy card. A crazy card on the main card. And starting at the top, Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Crute. Now, Jimmy Crute is a young gun, 25 years of age. Anthony Smith has been a veteran. He fought John Jones for the 205-pound title when Jones was still champ. And he did okay. He had a good rise. Yes, he has fought 50 fights, but realistically, he looks like a new gun. He looks like fresh blood, really, if you could say. In this fight, because it only lasted one round, and it was crazy. So, both were filling each other out in the first round. Leg kicks. Anthony Smith had his jab was pretty much the MVP of the first round. He knew how to stick it. He knew how to keep Crute on his tail or on his heels. And there were some leg kicks that changed the fight. Crute landed a couple, but just like that, Anthony Smith, after one leg kick, you could tell that Jimmy Crute's leg wasn't right. That something was tweaked, something was just off. They talked about it. Maybe it was a nerve, maybe it was something. It's just his leg wasn't right. But to Crute's credit, after one leg kick, he landed a takedown and arguably could have stole that round. But nonetheless, the way it finished, they got back to their corners, and Crute, he was walking funny, as you'd expect. And then So they were on their stools. They were checking on him. Anthony Smith stands up, gets ready for the second round. Crute gets up. It kind of stumbles. The doctors come to take a look at Crute. Crute says he's ready to go, but his leg is just messed up the way he's walking, and they called the fight just like that. Doctor stoppage. Anthony Smith gets a solid win. Probably wasn't the way he expected, but still nonetheless win for Anthony Smith. And Jimmy Crute, young guy, like I said, only 25 years of age. He'll come back, and you can't deny his toughness, no matter what it was. But hats off to Crute, and hats off to Anthony Smith. And then talk about a crazy coincidence. Now, after a fight, people were saying, oh, it's karma, oh, it's this, or it's that. Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman, next fight on the card. Now, there was a bunch going into this because this was their rematch. Uriah Hall got stopped by Chris Weidman a decade prior to them both being in the UFC. So there was a redemption motivation factor for Uriah Hall. For Chris Weidman, obviously, we know the story. Since defeating Vitor Belfort in his last successful title defense, he lost the Rockhold, and then he wasn't the same. He's been 2-6 since being Vitor, and people were talking about, well, he's looked probably the best he's ever looked. I mean, in his last fight, he beat Omari Akhmedov, so he's got momentum going in this fight, and interesting to see how both, because they're both kind of in a weird spot. So how would they rebound? Well, in an unfortunate way, but yeah. So this was the shortest you could say, so I'll just get through it. Chris Weidman, he threw a leg kick, and if you saw the rematch between Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva, he threw a leg kick. Excuse me. Weidman checked it, and it snapped his ankles, broke his ankle, snapped his leg. Just uneasy. And you thought, well, maybe that doesn't happen again. Well, Weidman, he threw a leg kick, and I couldn't really see it because I was so focus on one thing, and it was just Weidman threw a leg kick, and he snapped his leg, snapped his ankle, and I recommend that I wouldn't recommend anyone look it up. I would not recommend, because that was gruesome. That just don't look it up. If you're curious how the fight went, don't not look it up. Please. Weidman snapped his leg, and you could tell right away, and immediately Herb Dean called it off. Weidman, you can tell, was in gruesome pain. He was upset, as you could expect. So, Uriah Hall wins on a technicality. Yeah, not the redemption he obviously wanted. A win, though, is a win, I guess. If there's one bright spot for Uriah Hall. Afterwards, he was taking on a gurney or a stretcher, and to the back. Luckily, yesterday he had successful surgery, but it's unfortunate because the way his career has pretty much panned out after his short rise to middleweight gold, and so now it's just unfortunate. Especially after the previous fight with Smith and Crute. That will probably never happen again. The way those events lined up, but it is what it is. Then the next fight, the first of 3 title fights, Valentina Shevchenko against Jessica Andrade. Valentina Shevchenko, she has it all. You can say what you want, how it's a bad division and whatnot. That's pretty much how it is with the majority of the women's divisions. It's just the way it is. And in the UFC. But so there was riding. I mean, Jessica, she has fought in basically all the weight classes. She is a former bantamweight champion. Or no, wait, strawweight. Yeah, she beat Rose Namajunas and defeated her to win the title. Then she lost it to Zhang Weili. This fight was domination, however. Just Valentina picked her apart, as you expect. In the second round, she finished her, and that was a wrap. That's all I could say. Then, in the co-main events, Zhang Weili versus Rose Namajunas. This was an intriguing fight because we've seen Zhang Weili in against her fight with Andrade and against her fight with Joanna, she is tough. She is tough. She can go back and forth. She has good striking. Rose Namajunas, I mean, we know she beat Joanna not once but twice. And then she was dropped on her head by Jessica Andrade, lost her title, took some time away. She quote unquote retired, but she took some time away and she's come back and with a beautiful head kick, dropped John Willie, finished her up. I mean, Sean Willie protested the stoppage. I mean, I think anyone can see that she was hurt, and just like that, we could definitely see a rematch, and I would like to see it. But Rose Namajunas is back on top, and once again, the strawweight champion of the world. So then we get into the main event of the evening. Jorge Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman for the part 2 for the welterweight title of the world. Now, the first fight was on 6 days' notice after Gilbert Burns tested positive for COVID. Now, this fight, it's like, okay, how would Jorge do with a full training camp? How would he do this time around? Now, I mean, you got both. I was going all for it professionally. I mean, the reality is, personally, Usman, he's been claiming for respect, more respect on his name, and Masvidal, he lost a bit of popularity in support of Jake Paul and Paul's fight with Ben Askren. That side, it was hard to pick who I'd want to win this fight. But professionally, looking at this fight, I think we are all kind of leaning towards Kamaru Usman. And that's the way it goes. I think many people thought that if it was going to be finished, it would have been Jorge. But Usman, and if Usman were to win, it'd be by decision. That was not to be for both sides, because in the second round, with a beautiful straight right, as beautiful as it can get, Kamaru Usman knocked out Jorge Masvidal and is 14-0 in the UFC and is still the top of the welterweight division. The only fight I want to see next for Usman is a rematch versus Colby Covington. That is the only fight that I want to see Usman face. Because Colby, I've said before, I'll say it again. He was winning that fight until that stoppage. Whether you want to say it was controversial or not, 50-50. Nonetheless, the point is Colby was winning that fight before the stoppage, point blank. I would love to see that those two go at it again. I mean, we also have Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz coming up soon. I don't think that the winner of that fight prompts a title shot. I think the only fight to make right now for Usman is him versus Covington Part 2. So, yesterday was intriguing because the Brooklyn Nets, now, they've been a very good topic for this season, NBA season, because they came in obviously with KD and Kyrie, and they got acquired James Harden from Houston. They signed Blake Griffin. They signed LaMarcus Aldridge, who unfortunately retired. Hope he gets better. But they just keep winning. Now, Steve Nash, in his first year as being a head coach now, there's going to be obviously an asterisk because KD, Kyrie, Harden, and Blake Griffin. But despite whether it be KD being hurt, Kyrie being hurt, Harden being hurt now, it's just interesting to see how they keep staying the top of the East, their conference. And yesterday, against the Phoenix Suns, we could have very well seen a preview of the NBA Finals this year. The reason being is the Phoenix Suns have been probably the most overlooked team besides, they are the most overlooked team that is top in their conference, I would say. I mean, whether it's DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, or Devin Booker, they just get it done. Now, the Brooklyn Nets defeated them 129-118, or it might have been 128-119, either way. So, nonetheless, I wouldn't mind seeing these two duke it out again in the future for the NBA Finals, or I wouldn't be surprised. And then last but not least, go over the big trade over the weekend between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, going over the mock drafts for the Chiefs, You were curious to see how, because when you look at their roster as a whole, kind of difficult to pinpoint one need that they need during the draft. And you could argue they could trade it out. This case, they traded for Baltimore Ravens offensive tackle Orlando Brown Jr., who has been a mainstay the last few seasons for the Ravens. I mean, his first 3 years he was right tackle. Last season, when Ronnie Stanley got hurt, he moved over to left tackle. Then it got into his mind, like, I want to be recognized as the left tackle. So he's traded to the Chiefs for their first round pick, a third round pick, and future picks. Same for the Ravens, who are nonetheless. So that's the baseline, really. A first and a third for Orlando Brown. Now, this poses a question because now it gets really interesting for the Chiefs. Because last year, you look at all their stars week 1. Eric Fisher, left tackle, gone. Kelechi Osemele, because Tardif, he obviously stayed in Canada to help out. He's a free agent. Gone. Austin Ryder, their center from last season, gone. Andrew Riley, he's the only one left of right guard, still there. Mitchell Schwartz, gone, released. So the way it looks now, as it seems, for the Chiefs O-line, I would think that Orlando Brown is going to be a left tackle. Joe Thuney or Tardif will be a left guard. Austin Blythe, who they acquired from the Rams, he'll be at center. Then a right tackle, either Mike Remmers or Kyle Long. One of those two will be right tackle, I would imagine. It just bears the question. The only question is, how are all these new pieces going to gel together? That is the only question, really, for the Chiefs this season. I mean, they're obviously really good O-linemen. It's just the only question because it's a new team. These guys have never played with each other before. I mean, they opted out of OTAs, so the first time all these guys being together will be probably training camp in a few months. It's just, that's the only question, is can all these new pieces work together? That is the only question. Because if they do, then Kansas City will be a force again and when it comes to January. That's simple. However, if they don't, then we'll see. Because, well, last season, I think the offense took a little bit of a growth because the Chiefs, in a few games, they took, I mean, especially the second game against the Raiders, they took short things, they took underneath throws, they ran the ball more, and perhaps Clyde Edwards-Helaire, his second year in the system, perhaps he can develop more, they can ride it out more. Because when you have so many weapons, it's easy to want to point or get as many points as possible on the board. But sometimes you need to be balanced, and for the most part, that's what they did last season. Now, as we obviously saw in the Super Bowl, they were too one-sided, and credits that they fell behind quickly. So that's another part, and also goes to the defense of the Bucks, the way it was. But I know it sounds weird because they lost in the Super Bowl, but still, there's always room for improvement. That's the only question. That's the only thing about the Chiefs. As for the Ravens, this gives them another first round pick at the end of the first round. So they could perhaps get a linebacker, I would think, and a wide receiver, whether it's Rashad Bateman or Terrence Marshall, or because they need a big presence at the receiver position. I know Eric DeCosta, he was pretty much offended that he brought up the report that, well, the Ravens don't have any good receivers. The reality is, I mean, Hollywood Brown, they like him, but he has done a lot. They drafted Devin Duvernay last season, but he didn't do much. They have obviously Mark Andrews at tight end, but they need a presence on the outside. And they signed Sammy Watkins, but he can't relatively stay healthy. So we'll see how that goes, but very interesting. Also, congrats to the Padres winning a hell of a game last night against the Dodgers, 8-7. It was a heck of a game. The Padres, the Giants, and the Dodgers. That is the best division right now in the MLB. So congrats to them. The Mets, Jason DeGrom, still an MVP candidate so far. They're doing well, so hats off to the Mets. And that's everything for the podcast today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you. Sorry if I sound a little stuffy today. I guess just the allergies in the air, but I'm fine. Thank you. Hope you all be safe as well. Peace. I'll see you guys on Thursday. So thank you. Peace.